Who is it who walked the streets of Galilee, healing the sick and setting the captives free? Do you know who it is? Who is it who for sinners shed his blood, and now for cleansing all can plunge beneath that flood? It's Jesus. But do you know who he is? He's the image of the invisible God, and he's the brightness of his glory, the first, the last, the future, the past. He is God. He's the image of the invisible God, and he's the brightness of his glory, the first, the last, the future, the past. He is God. The first, the last. He's my future and my past. He is God. God.
And good morning once again, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to another Living Hope Today study. So happy you're here with me. Thank you very much. Today I have to start with a little confession. It took me 4.5 years to go through the New Testament verse by verse. And we have those studies uploaded at ruadisciple.com. Okay, then my wife and a few others said, hey, why don't you do the Old Testament? Okay, well, let's try it. We got through Genesis, we got through Exodus, but I've been dreading Leviticus. Why? Well, because how does Leviticus relate to modern day life as a Christian? Isn't it just a bunch of rituals and rules and regulations that God gave his original community out there in the desert? How does that relate to my life now? And am I really going to have to read through 27 chapters of that? But in the end, the more I dig into this, the deeper it gets. And you know what? There are some profound implications for us as followers of Christ today that are rooted in the teaching that Leviticus brings to us. God is all wise, and he's showing us something that might not be right on the surface, but if you dig a little bit into this, you're going to be profoundly impacted by the truth of it. Let me show you what I mean. You remember when we talked about what's happening in Exodus, or in Leviticus, we talked about Exodus 19, that God's intention for Israel is listed right here. God says to Moses, now if you obey me and fully keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession. So God is setting apart a people. How did he do that? Well, remember, he went back, he called Abraham. He said, Abraham, I choose you. I'm going to make a covenant with you. Your descendants are going to be more than the stars in the sky. You're going to inherit the promised land. All nations of the world are going to be blessed through you. Abraham, you're the guy. Okay, God chose him. Abraham Isaac, Jacob. We see the plan of God unfolding as these men have descendants, and those descendants multiply. And by the time we get to Exodus 19, we have over 1 million people out here in the desert being delivered from Egyptian slavery, following the Lord. Okay? God says, look, I am going to call you out to be separate. You're my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me what? A kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Why is that important? This people is the group that God has decided to reveal himself through. The prophets come through the Jews. The scriptures come through the Jews. God has brought his Messiah to the world through the Jews. This is a separated group of people that God has separated with intention. All right? You're a kingdom of priests. Not just one or two, but you're set apart for me. You're a holy nation. You're not going to be like everybody else. Why? Because you belong to me, and what you do is going to reflect that you belong to me. We get to the book of Leviticus, and what do we find? Be holy. I'm holy, God says. This is the theme of the whole book. Come out from among all those pagan nations and follow me. You remember holiness, I hope. It's Kadesh in Hebrew. That slide's wrong. It's not in the Old Testament 498 times. It's in the whole Bible 498 times, this idea of holiness. 92 of those almost 500 times in Scripture, 92 are found in the book of Leviticus. So almost 20% of the usage of the word holy in Scripture is here in the book of Leviticus. Be set apart. We first heard about holiness in Genesis 2. God blessed the seventh day and he made it holy. He set it apart for sacred use. Excuse me. That's it. That's the definition of holiness, to be set apart for the sacred use. God decides what's holy. God decrees what's holy. God sets the boundaries of holiness, and he tells us to live like that. It is his very nature, his essential character. He is holy. The next time we hear about holiness in Scripture is in Exodus 3, when Moses meets God at the burning bush. God says, don't come any closer, take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. The ground you're on is holy. Okay, so when we think about the word holy, I just want to run you through some of the definitions you'll see as we go through this book and as we go through Scripture at large. Holy can be said of a sanctuary, a building dedicated to the service of God, a place in which the Lord is normally present when ritual and moral purity are practiced. Okay, that's one way the word holy is used. It's also used of holy objects. Objects that are set apart, a person or an inanimate object which is dedicated and consecrated to the Lord. They're pulled out of normal use. They're used for sacred use. Holiness in general is defined like this: the quality of moral purity. It has a focus that's unique. It's not corrupt. It's not impure. It's not like people following their sinful natures. Holiness is the emulation of God's character, which is absolutely pure and sacred. All right? It's also used as a holy place. We see that in Scripture. It's a part of a building. Not the whole building, but a part of a building, separated and dedicated to the Lord with limited human access. And lastly, it's the most holy place is another usage of this word. It's a part of a building which is separated and dedicated to the Lord with very limited human access, right? The high priest was the only one that was allowed into the most holy place, with a unique feature of being the central area of a worship building or tent where the Lord has his presence. This is how the Old Testament works. And again, that curtain that divides that most holy place from everything else is torn asunder when Jesus dies on the cross. So when you get to Leviticus, holiness is used like this. The Lord, the God of Israel, is holy. The people of God are holy. The tabernacle's holy. The priests and the priestly garments are set apart for sacred use. The sacrifices are holy. The feasts are holy. And the offerings are holy. Okay, Pastor, you told us you were going to tell us how this relates to New Testament Christianity. I want you to think about this with me. What is God doing with this nation he has called in the book of Leviticus? He's separating them. You guys are not going to be like the pagan nations. You're not going to follow their rituals or customs. In fact, you're not going to marry with them, because if you do, I know eventually you're going to succumb to following some of their ways. You're going to not be separate for me, but you might add a little bit of worship of their God into your day. You might start to believe some of the things they follow are true. No, God says you're holy, you're set apart, you're mine. Your distinction in the world is to be wholly mine. Yeah, double play on words there. Well, think about it. What does the New Testament tell us? Love not the world, neither the things of the world, right? The lust of the flesh, the pride of life. Don't love the world, all right? Be transformed by the renewing of your mind, right? Don't follow the desires of this world. What's the New Testament telling us? Be holy, even as the Lord is holy. Be set apart. Instead of trying to blend into your culture where you look like everybody else except you go to church on Sunday, be separate, be distinct, be absolutely pure as God is absolutely pure. Do everything in your power to live like he's called you to live, and then the world will understand what it means to follow a holy God. Now, as this is getting laid out for us in the book of Leviticus, we see that there are distinctions, and we'll follow these as we go through. There's clean versus unclean, right? There's holy versus profane. The individual worshiper gets to decide which one of these things he or she will follow. God says what? Be separate from other nations. The same thing we're taught in the New Testament. Be separate for God's use. The same thing we're taught in the New Testament. Abide in me, Jesus says, right? That's where you're going to produce fruit, when you are wholly committed to me and set apart. Okay, now let's look at it. Today we're going to see grain offerings. When someone brings a grain offering, so here's a different kind of offering, and this offering isn't about blood. It's not about atonement. It's about produce, all right? When someone brings a grain offering to the Lord, okay, his offering is to be what? Fine flour. So again, you're bringing an animal, bring one with no defect. You're bringing a grain offering, bring fine flour. Bring the best. Don't bring the junk, okay? What do you do when you get that grain offering? Well, you pour oil on it. You put incense on it, all right? And then what do? You take it to Aaron's sons, the priest. And guess what? The priest will take a handful of the fine flour and oil together with all the incense. And what's he going to do? Well, just remember, Aaron is the line of Levites. His sons and descendants are the priests. These guys are the intermediaries between the worshiper and the holy God. They represent the people to God. They represent God to the people. All right? They have a role in this grain offering. What do? Well, they get the fine flour, they get the oil, they get the incense, they mix it all up. They take a handful of it, and guess what? These are the ingredients. Then they burn it. They burn it as a memorial portion. They can't just burn it on the ground. No, they burn it on the altar. How do they do that? Well, they light it on fire. I guess the oil is enough to catch it on fire. that make an offering by fire, it's going to be, again, we see this phrase, an aroma pleasing to the Lord. All right, what happens then? Well, the rest of the grain offering belongs to Aaron and his sons. Okay, so we're assuming then they're going to eat it because it's food. But look what God says about it. It's most holy. Once that handful has been offered and burnt on the altar, guess what? It makes the rest of it sacred, set apart for God's use. It is a most holy part of the offerings made to the Lord by fire. God is setting that apart. It's such a critical concept. We'll see it over and over. Now look, in the 4th verse, we find out there's different kinds of grain offerings. If you bring a grain offering baked in an oven, okay, so that's not a handful of grain. That's something that you bake. It is to consist of fine flour again, cakes made without yeast and mixed with oil, or wafers made without yeast, spread with oil. Notice the repeated exclusion of yeast. Symbolically, yeast represents sin, as we'll find as we continue through here. So God says when you're baking these things, don't use yeast. If your grain offering is prepared on a griddle, a different way to prepare it, it is to be made of fine flour, again, mixed with oil, again, without yeast. God's very specific about certain things. Crumble it, pour oil on it. It's a grain offering. If your grain offering is cooked, a different way to present a grain offering, cooked in a pan, it's to be made of fine flour and oil. Bring the grain offering made of these things to the Lord, present it to the priest, who shall take it to the altar. He shall take out the memorial portion from the grain offering and burn it on the altar as an offering made by fire, again repeated, an aroma pleasing to the Lord. The rest of the grain offering belongs to Aaron and his sons. It is most holy. Again, repetition. It's the most holy part of the offerings made to the Lord by fire. Every grain offering you bring to the Lord must be made without yeast. Again, how many times can he say it? For you are not to burn any yeast or honey. Honey is also included as an exclusion in an offering made to the Lord by fire. You may bring them to the Lord as an offering of the first fruits. Oh, there's something new, an offering of the first fruits. In other words, we had a harvest. The very first things we receive, we bring to the Lord. But they are not to be offered on the altar as a pleasing aroma. This is different for the first fruits. Season all your grain offerings with salt. There's a sermon right here, right? Jesus called us the salt of the earth, right? Salt was the currency that sealed the covenant. So I want that symbolic seal of the covenant in your grain offering, is what God's saying. Don't leave the salt of the covenant of your God out of your grain offerings. There it is right there, the salt of the covenant, right? Add salt to all your offerings. Notice how clear God is. There isn't much way to dispute that. What that means, is there? If you bring a grain offering of first fruits to the Lord, offer crushed heads of new grain roasted in the fire. Put oil and incense on it. It is a grain offering. The priest shall burn the memorial proportion of the crushed grain and the oil together with all the incense as an offering made to the Lord by fire. So before we go today, I just want to fast forward you to the New Testament for a second. 1 Peter 2:9. But you are a chosen people. This is talking about New Testament Christians. You're a royal priesthood. Hey, where have we heard that before? You're a holy nation. Hey, where have we heard that before? A people belonging to God. Again, the concept, Christian, be separate from the world. Don't blend in. Do everything God says and stand out. You belong to God, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of the darkness into his wonderful light. Why do we do these things? To declare his praises. I've gone a little long today, but I hope you get the thrust of what Leviticus is driving us to. It's critically important for us to set ourselves apart in our thinking, our behavior, our speech, the way we love people, to make sure that people understand we are dancing to the beat of a different drummer. We walk in the light even as he is in the